Hey, what's going on YouTube? Gent here, real estate sales representative with Remax Real Estate Center in Cambridge. We are now into video 3 of our 4-part video series on first-time homebuyers. So today's video, we're going to get all into the cost of things. So the cost of closing costs, the cost of moving, and the cost of living in a home. I know what you're thinking, oh my God, we spent so much time on numbers in video 2, but this is really going to build on that, and this is really going to help you see what you're going to pay each month and how you can budget for yourself and you can see all the costs of owning a home, because homeownership is expensive, especially if you're talking about repairs and different things. All right, so the number one cost of things is going to be your mortgage. We covered that pretty in depth in video number 2. So with your mortgage, we talked a lot about being above or below the 20%. Remember, if you're below 20%, you're going to have to get insurance on that. That comes through your lender. With that insurance, part of your closing costs could potentially be paying tax, provincial tax, on the insurance that you take out. So for example, if it was 8% and you had $5,000 insurance, you'd have to pay the tax on that. The 8% would be $400. So you'd owe that on closing. Right, so along with closing costs, besides the insurance, we also have land transfer tax, which we talked about in depth in video 2 and how to figure out that. Remember, you get your grant of $4,000, or anything above that, you're going to have to pay, and that'll be due upon closing. When you're actually getting into buying a home, this will be more with resale homes than it would be with new homes or new builds, but you could potentially have an appraiser. So the appraiser could be anywhere between $200 and $400. You could then also have a home inspector. Here in Ontario, especially in the area that I'm in Waterloo region, we've been selling a lot of homes in the last number of years without any conditions. So there hasn't really been the condition of an inspection. That might change in the future, especially after we get through all of this stuff we're going through in the early 2020. So when I say condition, I mean when you put in an offer to buy a home, okay, you're going to put in an offer for $400,000. I know that's an easy number that we've been working with. And then you can put on a condition. So condition that you get approved for financing, or there could be a home inspection. So you want to hire an inspector at your own cost to come in, look at the home, see if there's any issues, see what maybe there'd be some repairs or some things that might change what you value the home to be. So things like that. So condition just means my offer to buy this home is conditional upon these other things being met or being satisfied. So if you're to go with a home inspector, that could range in price from anywhere between $300 and $500 that you would pay the home inspector. And again, that would come out of your pocket before you even take possession of the home. Another thing, when you're taking possession of someone else's home who's already lived there could be some prepaid costs. So what I mean by that is that property tax, like I suggested, you could pay with your mortgage, but there's also the option that you can pay quarterly or you could pay in installments, whatever the deal is. If someone is prepaid a chunk of it, so let's say, for example, your property tax is $2,000 and that person has paid $1,000, but they've only lived there for 5 months, well, you'd owe them that 1 month's worth of property tax back. So you have to pay them that. Same with utilities. So some utilities, it's not that common, but some utilities you can pay in advance as well. Again, if the homeowner that you're buying a home from has already paid money in advance, now you've got to pay them back for what they've paid. But again, that's something that you'll be made aware of, but that just goes into your closing costs. And along that same sort of line with utilities, some utilities, if you're setting up for the first time, like if you're a first-time home buyer, you might have to pay an administration fee or actually a deposit fee because you've never had credit with this utility company. So that could cost you a couple $100. If you're moving to somewhere, maybe you've rented and you've already had utilities in your name, you might not have to pay an administration fee because you already might have credit. But again, that's just something that you need to be aware of, that it could be an expense coming up for you. And then of course, the other big expense is a lawyer fee, right? So we talked about in video 1, surrounding yourself with a great team. You really, really want a great real estate lawyer, somebody that you trust, somebody that you feel has your back. Lawyer fees are in and around the $1,000 mark for a typical real estate transaction. Again, a little bit higher, a little bit below, but kind of have $1,000 in your mind. As well, there's something called title insurance, which guarantees the title of the home, or guarantees that if the title isn't how it's represented, you're protected. That as well is a fee in itself. That's anywhere between $150 and $300. That would be tacked on to your lawyer fee. I highly recommend that you really explore that with your lawyer and give it some thought. Another thing, if you're moving out of your parents' place and they're still living at that, you don't have to worry about this, but if you're moving from somewhere else, Canada Post, forwarding your mail it goes in chunks. I typically recommend a year. It's around the $100 mark. But again, that's just another fee that's going to add up. My dad had an expression, you're going to $50 yourself to death. And it's the truth. You're going to move in your home and you're going to do this and do that, and it's going to be $50. You know, it's not expensive, but when you keep adding it up, it's going to add up to a lot of money. So you really have to, you know, plan ahead of time and keep in mind what you want to spend your money on. So that's all leading up to actually taking possession of your house. Come in the day of moving, the big expense is the actual moving, right? So you've got the option of hiring movers, but they can be expensive. The other side of things is that you move it yourself, get some friends, get some family, hire a truck, and move it yourself. Now, when you go along with that second option, you're going to have to buy pizza and beer because nobody works for free, and they're going to demand that, or else you're going to have a mutiny on your hands. So make sure you budget for that as well as part of your moving expenses on the day of. When you get into your actual home, you know, your first little bit, you might not think about some little expenses. So there's obviously your curtains, your blinds. A new home tends not to come with that. Sometimes resale homes, they want to take those with them, so you might have to buy those yourself. Those can get really expensive. Other things like shelving in the garage or in the basement for storage, wood just to organize your garage, things like that add up quickly. Landscaping might be not something that you do like the day you move in, but that's probably going to be something that you're going to want to do your first summer. So that can get very expensive. Plants and dirt isn't cheap, and it depends on the property that you have. It could certainly add up. Again, that might be something that you push back to later on as opposed to having it on your first week or even your first half a year. And then along the same lines of landscaping, you need to have shovels for snow blower if that's what you want to do, lawnmower if you need to cut your grass, hedge trimmer, that sort of thing. All those add up if you haven't already thought about that and saved up for that or purchased it ahead of time. One thing I can recommend is that while you're planning or while you're waiting to move in somewhere, get all this stuff, right? You know, when you talk about $100 here, $100 there, and it adds up to $600, that's a lot of money to pay on one day as opposed to, you know, spread out the $100 payments over 6 times. So getting things like old dishes from friends, buying lawnmowers and snowblowers or whatever the case may be when it's on sale and in the off season, if you're waiting to move in that long or if you're planning to move in, little things like that will spread out your expenses and put down your costs that you're actually spending when you move in, right? Because it's already gonna be expensive enough when you move in and when you close the deal for all your different payments. So keep that in mind, that trying to save up as much stuff as you can beforehand. Another thing that might creep up on you as the process is going is if you get a home inspection, and there could be things that are mandated to be repaired. So for example, a home inspector finds something, let's say it's the steps to the front door. The steps are unsafe. So the home inspector says this needs to be repaired within X number of days or X number of weeks of you moving in. That could be an expense that you weren't planning on. On the other side of that, if you're in a market that you're not getting home inspections, you know, you could move in somewhere and find that there's an expense that you weren't counting on, and you might have to repair something quickly, or you might have to repair something that really you can't enjoy the home unless that's been repaired. So we've covered kind of things leading up to moving in, the move-in costs, things you want to buy for the home, and now it's actually running the home. So you have your utilities. So you have gas, electrical or hydro, and water and sewer. Those are your things you're going to pay no matter where you are. Now, when you talk about different types of homes, it's stuff like this that can really add up and can really change. Something like heat, for example, okay? So when you're heating a home, if you're a detached home, you've got 4 walls that don't touch anybody else and they just go to the outside. You're gonna lose a lot more heat than if you live in a townhome where you have neighbors on your side and they're helping to heat your place as well and helping retain some of your heat. Even just your square footage, you know, the number of bathrooms you have, all adds up to your monthly expenses, you know, creeping up and creeping up. So again, when we talk about your first home and we talk about, you know, what things do I absolutely need to have, you got to think about, do I need to spend that X amount of more money to get this bigger home, to have a bigger mortgage, and now my utilities, the cost of heat, everything goes up because of that. You're adding higher property tax, you're adding more expenses to run the house month to month. And that's all something you need to think about when you're getting into your first home. A tip you can do, ask. Find your friends, find family members, see what they have. I mean, I think most people will be pretty open about what they pay. We already know that we can go on the municipality website to find out the property tax for a home, but go and find the difference between what does a detached home of the same square footage as a townhouse compare with utility bills, because that can really make a big difference. I can tell you that I lived in a bigger home. My wife and I decided to downsize. We live in the same neighborhood, our home is about 500 square feet less, and our utility bill is about half as expensive as they were per month. Home insurance and content insurance is another monthly expense that we all have to have. That's extremely important to have. So shop around for that. You can get a deal if you bundle your car and your home and things like that. So shop around for that and see where you can get your best rates. And then your typical expenses, your phone, your internet, your cable, all those are extremely expensive, and you might be used to living in a place where you had 500 channels, but now you're on your own, and it might not be feasible to start off with a 500 channel package when you can save some money that way. Obviously, you're going to know this beforehand, but you're going to know if you're going to have a condo fee or a common element fee. They're very, very similar. But if you're moving into a condo or a place that has a common element fee, make sure you know exactly what your fee is covering. So my place, for example, I have a common element fee, so I'm not part of a condo, but I share property with a condo complex. So my condo fee pays for garbage pickup, pays for street lights on our little street that we have, and pays for snow removal, and that's pretty much it. There's a lot of people in my complex that thought that it covered grass cutting as well. So there's a lot of people who didn't buy lawnmowers, and their grass is getting out of hand, and then they get warned by property standards, and it goes on and goes on. So make sure you're fully aware of a condo, what elements or what factors go into your condo fee and what that pays for. And then the last point that people often don't think about, your drive to work. So if you're moving to a different part of town, that's adding 10 minutes on to your drive to work, that's going to add on more of your gas payment. So again, when you're doing your budget, you're thinking about these things ahead of time, you're going to have to then take what your gas payment is, whatever that may be, $50 every 2 weeks, and now you're going to have to add on maybe $10 to cover yourself. So when you're planning ahead, video 2 talked about our mortgage. We can get our mortgage payment down. We can understand some of our closing costs, and we can understand some of our living costs when we're moving into a place. If we get all of those in order and we do this ahead of time, right? Even maybe before we start looking for a place, or maybe when we've got it narrowed down to, 3, 4, 5 houses that we want to look at the difference between house number 1, house number 2, and house number 3, and what my monthly expenses are going to be for that. So you can really see how changing a few factors, and we showed that in video 2, we're just changing a few numbers in our mortgage, but changing a few things like your square footage or being in a townhouse compared to a detached home can really, really change your monthly expenses. So get it all prepared, get it all set, have some knowledge in your head so you can understand how adding all this up together can really, really get away from you. Or if you're savvy and you understand how it works, you can really reduce your monthly costs, keep them as low as possible, not fall into the trap of being house poor where all your money goes to living in the home, you don't have any money for fun. So that's going to be it for me for video number 3. Shorter video for you today. Stay tuned for video number 4. We're going to wrap all this up and first time home buyers. Hopefully you learned a little bit more today. Hopefully you get your mind working, you get some numbers written down. Please feel free to email me or call me. I have a free assessment for yourself for a first-time homebuyer guide that I can send you, and it can have all these different numbers. You can plug everything in and you can see where you're at to start planning your budget and start getting prepared for your first home. So other than that, we will see you in video number 4, and everyone, take care of yourselves, all right?